In this episode in our series of real-world product features, we'll be exploring the NX1, Samsung's flagship mirrorless interchangeable lens camera. We've come to Carkeek Park in Seattle on a cold autumn morning to spend some time with Jordan Stead, a local photographer for the SeattlePI.com. Shooting alongside Jordan, we'll be documenting the seasonal salmon run, an important event in Seattle's ecological calendar and a local tourist attraction.
There's a legendary salmon run happening right now this year, pushing from Puget Sound up Piper Creek in Carkeek Park, and that's what we're going to be documenting. In this situation, I'm especially looking forward to checking out the frame rate and the autofocus. I'm typically using pro bodies for sports and everything else, and so I'm looking to see how this will compare to that. And if it does, I could be a convert. We'll see.
As a freelance photographer, Jordan covers a wide range of subjects from sports to portraits. Working for an online publication, he doesn't just go where he's told and come home with a single image. Instead, he hunts down his own leads, moves quickly, and focuses on telling a story through a series of photographs. For Jordan, a camera has to be fast enough and versatile enough to keep up in any situation.
Got anything yet? It's always good to have a human element when you're covering a story too that doesn't necessarily have a human element in it from the get-go.
Yeah.
You know, and for instance,
it's not just fish.
Right.
Are they coming up through here then?
From what I understand, yeah.
All right, so we're going to go up there and sort of work around it and then up.
Right.
The NX1 is Samsung's first foray into making a serious camera for high-end enthusiasts and professional photographers. As a flagship product, the NX1 features a weatherproof magnesium alloy body, 15 frames per second maximum shooting rate, a 28 megapixel backside illuminated CMOS sensor, and an all-new hybrid AF system. Its large tilting AMOLED display is touch sensitive, and like all current Samsung cameras, it features extensive built-in Wi-Fi connectivity. The NX1 is also capable of shooting 4K and 1080 60p video. Samsung's really pulled out all the stops in the NX1 to make it as appealing as possible to advanced users. Both of the lenses we're using today, Samsung's 16-50mm and 50-150mm zooms, offer fast maximum apertures, weather sealing, and built-in image stabilization.
So we have this one up here that's above the ladder that's cleared it, and now it's resting up there, whereas its buddy is down here still waiting to jump.
The journey of the salmon, returning to the creek from the open ocean and Puget Sound, is a Darwinian struggle played out in front of our eyes. After furious bursts of energy to overcome obstacles, sometimes leaping to traverse rocks and logs, they settle into calm areas to regain their energy and prepare for the next challenge. They've come back to the very same waters in which they were born to lay their eggs and die.
What you'll see with a lot of the salmon in the stream is they don't look like the salmon that shows up in your plate.
Yeah.
And this is all part of that life cycle. They're pushing towards their death, essentially, at the end of this.
So they've been through a lot.
They've been through a lot.
Point.
Shooting in the low light, we raised our ISO sensitivities in favor of high shutter speeds to freeze the action, and switched our cameras to their maximum frame rate of 15 FPS. We're
under tree cover, it's still morning light, so I'm really going to push it. Right now I'm shooting at 6400 ISO, and we're going to see how that performs.
We've got JPEGs and RAWs too, so we can, if there's any noise issues, we can process that out.
Yeah. This EVF is impressive. It's got a very fast refresh rate.
The fact that there's almost no lag or delay in it, I mean, you forget you're using an EVF to be honest after a while. Do you have the fast frame rate set up on there?
I do. We're ready to rock under 15 frames a second.
Timing and patience were key to capturing the unpredictable salmon, and so, as it turned out, was keeping a good footing on the wet rocks.
And it looks sharp to me. Also, did someone just fall in the stream?
I think our director just fell in the river.
As our soaking wet director Googled symptoms of hypothermia on his waterlogged phone,
It's cold.
we took a moment to explore the NX1's advanced autofocus system. In common with some other high-end mirrorless cameras, the NX1 offers hybrid autofocus, but it's unusual in featuring 205 phase detection AF points, many more than even the best DSLRs. In single-point AF mode, you can change the size of the AF area and position the AF point using the four-way controller on the camera's rear, or by touch using the rear display. This is particularly useful when your display is tilted out for shooting from high or low angles, when your eye is away from the viewfinder. The NX1's 15 frames per second maximum frame rate is impressive. One curious feature is that images shot in continuous burst mode are grouped when you review them. This helps if you're shooting multiple bursts and want to quickly identify one of them, but it can be a bit confusing.
Are you still sticking at those high ISOs, like 6400?
Yeah, I'm going to remain at 6400 pretty much for the entire time we're in the stream.
Right.
In this scenario, I'm so worried about the moment, I'm not too worried about the settings. I just want to keep them where they were and just work with it.
So you must do a lot of crouching in your job.
A lot of crouching.
Yeah.
A lot of knee pads.
Yeah. So while you're doing that, I'm actually going to go and see how good the stabilization system is and see if I can get some slow speed on the water, because there's some, I think, good opportunity to get some blurry water just coming over that rock. Let's drop my ISO right down to 100 and temperature about maybe F8. So let me just see whether this is stable enough to hold up. That's pretty good. That's 1/5 of a second in the middle of the range of this zoom, and that's completely sharp. So this camera has a touch screen, it's a high resolution, touch sensitive screen, and you don't really need to use it a lot of the time because it still has a lot of direct manual control. But one of the situations in which it's actually very useful is just for quickly checking focus, because you can zoom all the way in like that on an image, and you can pan and track around, just like you would on a smartphone basically. And, you know, Samsung of all the companies out there knows how to do this.
After a couple of hours of shooting, we moved on to one final spot in the hope of capturing some details.
So kind of here to the final, the final spot really at the end of the river that we can access. This just shows how big these things are, and this is one that hasn't quite made it.
This is a perfect detail. This is a great detail image, because I'm going to get right up close to it. I mean, obviously it's not going anywhere. We have great light.
It's very still life.
Exactly, it's very still life.
It's as still as it can get.
Exactly. Now that we're away from shooting the action, I've dropped my ISO quite a bit so that I can retain better image quality.
Yeah.
And because I don't need to shoot at a quick shutter speed right now, I can shoot at something even as slow as 1/4 of a second with this image stabilization, and it would still be sharp.
Dead salmon litter the banks of the creek in various forms of decomposition. There's no risk of subject movement here, so for these shots, Jordan and I were aiming for low ISO sensitivities, lots of detail, and relying again on the image stabilization systems of our lenses to help keep things sharp and blur-free. At 28 megapixels, the sensor of the NX1 is capable of resolving a huge amount of detail. With this done, we headed down the creek a few feet to try out the NX1's video capabilities.
Right now we're setting up on the riverbank to shoot some video samples, both at 4K and at 1080p at 60p. We're going to try some slowdown on that, and then we're also just going to shoot some high resolution and see what it looks like.
In addition to its still imaging features, the Samsung NX1 is a very capable video camera. Its headline video feature is 4K footage at a cinematic frame rate of 24p, but it can also capture HD video at 60 and 30p. With the camera on a tripod, we set the NX1 up pointing towards an area of shallow water, where earlier we'd noticed several salmon resting in their progress upstream.
Just from this screen, I can tell the video is going to look beautiful on like a large monitor.
Oh, there we go.
Was that through the middle?
We got that.
Nice.
After a long cold morning shooting stills and with some HD and 4K video footage in the can, Jordan and I headed back to the beach to warm up. There was one more thing we wanted to test. We'd seen the benefit of the NX1's fast frame rate and quick, accurate AF when we were capturing the salmon splashing upstream in the creek. But how well can it track subjects moving towards the camera? In the absence of any professionally trained fish, Jordan used the next best thing: me.
All right, Jordan, so we've been here for a few hours now. We photographed the fish jumping in the quite low light first thing this morning. We've done some video, we've done some continuous tracking stuff with me walking up the beach just now. I mean, how do you get on with the camera? How did it perform for you today?
I was impressed. For the most part, I was impressed. I enjoyed using it. It was comfortable to use for the most part as well. Some big pros for me are the frame rate. The autofocus is nice, especially in continuous focus when you're using single point autofocus. And as far as I can tell from the back of the screen, just from jumping into 100%, I can tell the resolution is really nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly my experience of the camera, 28 megapixels. And these lenses are good too. I mean, this is not just blowing smoke for Samsung's sake. These lenses are really, really sharp.
Yeah.
That 50-150 is a very, very impressive piece of glass.
A couple things though that I really wish it had. One, a dedicated multi-controller direct to change your autofocus point. And I would love that to be right around where my right thumb is in the back of the camera. Secondly, I would love to be able to divorce the autofocus and the shutter from just the shutter button. So I can use a back button focus with my thumb on that AF button, and I can only use my index finger on the shutter for only shutter. That's especially helpful for sports, different compositions while still using autofocus.
Yeah, and the other thing I think we've talked about today is button customization in general. I think Samsung has a bit more work to do there. I think a big pro, I mean for me, I imagine for you too, is the weatherproofing of all this stuff too, because the 1650, the NX1 and the 50-150, they're all weather sealed. I was shooting last week in very heavy rain, everything was working. So bottom line, could you replace your current gear with the NX1 and a couple of lenses?
I feel good about it, about 85%. I feel yes, it can replace most of the work that I do.
Well, I think we've got a few shots in different situations with the tracking, so I'm curious to see how well it all works.
Sam, let's check out the files.
Great. Before leaving for the day, we stopped in to talk with Bill Malatinsky, who works with the Environmental Partnerships team at Carkeek Park.
The life cycle of salmon is they start in fresh water, they go to salt water for about 3 to 5 years, and then they return to the exact same creek. And they have about 2 weeks once they hit fresh water to lay their eggs, fertilize eggs, and then that's pretty much the end of the road for them. You know, it promotes a very environmental ethic in the people of Seattle. When you see what you need to protect, it's easier to actually protect, and capturing their attention with these salmon is the perfect way to do that.
All right, Jordan, we're back in the relative warmth and comfort of the DPReview studio after a very cold morning shooting by the Puget Sound.
Yeah, much better in here.
It is. So let's take a quick look at some of the pictures we shot today on the NX1. So what are you trying to do here?
So this is a semi-relatively low ISO sample shot with the 50-150. I just wanted to test out the depth of field on that sensor in particular. You know, there's nice light in this leaf, and really just to check resolution later on. I was curious to see how, when shot close, when we zoomed in, what it would look like. And it's a very impressive resolution.
It's pretty sharp, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a nice lens.
And this is also a 2.8, so we're wide open on this lens and it's still tack sharp.
And this is the stuff that we were working on together, really shooting side by side here. I know you were shooting mostly at fairly high ISOs. I think this one's ISO 6400.
Yep, I think almost every telephoto image that I was shooting with the 50-150, for the most part, if it's an image of a fish upstream in the water and it's tight like this, I was testing out a couple things: the frame rate, wide open performance in the lens, and low light performance, which I think was almost all shot around 6400.
Yeah.
To me, this is very easily publishable.
It's a backside illuminated sensor, so a lot of the light, the circuitry on the light gathering surface of the sensor that would typically be there is moved to the back. So in theory, the sensor is much more efficient than the previous generation, and despite the increase in resolution over the previous Samsung sensor, image quality should be the same or better. And again, that's a pretty heavy crop, I think, isn't it? That's in fact almost 100%.
Yeah, so this was a test to see what we could pull out of a file. This was shot relatively loose on the 50-150.
And it's noisy, and you can see there's some noise in there, but that's, you know, that's a shot that you really want to get regardless of the...
Right. This is a detail image that was shot with the 16-50. So this is as close as I was to this fish. There's no telephoto action going on here. My guess is that it was shot at about 50 millimeter. I just appreciate it because we didn't get the chance to shoot with a 16-50 a lot with the moving fish. So why not throw on that wider lens and get closer physically?
And here's another shot just showing a detail. We both got versions of this shot, and this one's only at, I think, an 80th of a second.
The resolution is incredible, especially at lower ISOs. It's that thing that everybody wants, is this high megapixel camera, while still being able to shoot quickly, have good autofocus. You know, in the past there's been these compromises that you'd have to make per camera body, and I think this is a really nice blend of all those things.
The stabilization system, I have to say, it was very, very, very impressive. I mean, when you were doing a lot of your long lens work, I was sort of focused on just seeing what the stabilization system can actually do. That is a fifth of a second at about 35 millimeters equivalent, and that's just rested on my knee. So as well as stills, the NX1 also shoots video, has 60p, HD video also has 4K video and 24p. We shot this at 60p and slowed it down a little bit by interpreting it as 24p.
The really amazing thing about this is the fact that this is at ISO 5000.
Yeah, we didn't really, I mean, we were shooting this at the same settings as we were using, shutter speed was down to 50th of a second for the 24p, but ISO was the same as the stills, the light condition was the same as the stills. And now we shot some 24p at 4K, which is the maximum resolution that the camera can produce in video. And the fish were being very, very cooperative here. They just kept moving in and out of the shot. But the resolution of this footage is incredible.
Yeah, it looks great. This is also at a lower ISO than the 60p sample and at a thinner depth of field. But I love it. I think it looks really nice.
I mean, I've certainly been fairly impressed.
Yeah, definitely. Overall, very capable. Fun to use, a lot of great features, great frame rate, great autofocus, comfortable ergonomics, except for some of the stuff that we talked about.
Yeah, little buttons and somewhat lack of customization.
Yeah, and the good news about that stuff is that a lot of it can be fixed with firmware.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, I've made a list. I think a lot of it is definitely one firmware fix away, because this is a new product for Samsung. It's a new product category, so
Yeah.
they're learning.
Hey, everybody is.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.